Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night is a poem written by Dylan Thomas, a Welsh poet. He was very famous and popular during his lifetime. He lived from 1914 to 1953. The poem we shall discuss today, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, he wrote in 1947 while he was visiting Florence with his family. But the poem was published in 1951, and when he sent, after writing the poem, he sent it to one of his friends with this note. He wrote to his friend, "The only person I can't show the little enclosed poem is, of course, my father, who doesn't know he's dying." So from that note we know that the poem was written actually to his father. He wrote the poem to his father, to his dying father. The poem was published in 51. His father died in 52, the following year, and Dylan Thomas himself died in 1953 when he was in New York City in America, giving some poetry recitals. He fell into a coma, and he was, because of his heavy drinking, he was taken to the hospital, and the doctor there diagnosed his case as brain damage because of heavy drinking. He was known to be a heavy drunkard. The poem is a villanelle. A villanelle is a French form of poetry. It consists of 5 tercets and 1 quatrain. And the rhyme scheme goes ABA for each tercet. Tercet meaning 3 stanza of 3 lines, 3-line stanzas. ABA for each tercet. And the quatrain at the end, the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, A. And it has a very peculiar format. The first line in the first stanza has to be repeated at the end of the second stanza and the fourth stanza. And the third line in the first stanza has to be repeated at the end of the third and the fifth stanzas. And both lines, the first and the third lines of the first stanza, are repeated at the last 2 lines in the final quatrain. That's why it's very important. The tricky part is to really for the poet to choose very good first and third lines in his first stanza, because they will be repeated all over the poem again and again. Let's read the poem and try to introduce it and discuss it, explain it stanza by stanza. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. He's saying to his father, do not go gentle into that good night. Good night here is death, of course. It's here. It's a pun for death, and he asks his father, his dying father, not to accept death, not to surrender to death. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Close of day again is death itself. Rage, rage against the dying of the light, and dying of the light again is death. So these the 3 lines in the first stanza, each of them ends with something connoting death, referring to death. Old age should burn. Old age should not surrender. People, elderly people should not surrender to death and accept it just peacefully. No, they should rage against it. They should do their best. They should fight it and should stick to their life as much as they can. Then, beginning from the second stanza, Dylan Thomas starts to give examples, 4 examples actually, 1 type in each stanza, of different people, different type of people who are about to die, yet they do not surrender themselves quietly to death without putting a fight. So the first type of people is the wise men. So he says in the second stanza, "The wise men at their end know dark is right, dark here also is death." Wise men, they know before they die, at the moment of their death, they know that dark is right. Death is the only truth in our life. It's inevitable. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Why they do not surrender quietly to death? Why? Because their words had forked no lightning. Their word, all their wise words throughout their lives did not bring forth any good results or any fruitful ending to them or to other people. And because of that, they want to live longer. They want to have some more time in order to preach people again, to try to do good more, in order to have more impact on people and on people's life. And because of that, they do not go gentle into that good night. They don't just accept death quietly, peacefully. No, they fight it. Then the second type of people in the third stanza, good men. Good men, the last wave of these good men, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. He is talking about the good men who imagine how their frail deeds, their little and simple deeds in their lives might have danced in a green, might have become successful and might have brought in some good results and helped themselves and helped the people if everything worked out well. So because they imagined that everything they did in life, if they could have their deeds, their frail, simple, little, small deeds, could have brought in some great happiness, great happiness to other people. So they want to continue living in order to do some more efforts and bring happiness in other people's lives and to themselves too, of course. So they also rage against the dying of the light. The dying of the light is death, of course. Dance in a green bay. Dance in a green bay. You know, it's like a symbol of youth, symbol of spring, symbol of happiness. Their frail deeds might have danced in spring, the spring of their life and other people's lives. The fourth stanza, introduces a third type of people, wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. Those wild men like Dylan Thomas himself, wild people who drink and live their life fully, who caught and sang the sun in flight and learn too late, they grieve it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Those wild men who lived their life fully and completely and enjoyed themselves and their lives in every way possible, they caught the sun since its sunrise till its sunset. They caught and sang the sun in flight, the whole flight from sunset to from sunrise to sunset. But at the time of their death, they learn too late, they grieve it on its way. They learn what? They learn when they see the sun, their own sun is setting, they know it's the time to depart this life, it's the time of their death, it's their moment to leave this world. Then they learn it, but it's too late. And then they regret it. They regret the way they live their life. They want to go back to be young again, to live their life correctly in a better manner, to help people, to make good things in their life and the other people's lives too. So those people, those wild men too, they also do not go gentle into that good night. They do not just surrender to death. They fight it. They want to live, to relive their life or to live longer in order to do live it better, to do better things. And then the fifth stanza introduces the fourth type of people, grave men. Grave men near death who see the blinding sight. Grave men, the word grave, we know what grave is, it's a tomb, but also another meaning of grave is serious. So grave men meaning serious people who take life seriously, but they are close to their death, to their graves. So, and he Dylan Thomas further explains it by saying near death, grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Blinding sight at the moment of death. It seems we do not see people around us. It seems we go blind to whatever happens around us, but we see like another fact, another truth, the real truth. We see them at the moment of death. People, the dying people who are about to die, they see that they're about to leave this world, so they see the truth in a way that they never experienced it before in their life. So this blind sight, their blinding sight, they could blaze like meteors and be gay. Be gay here, be happy. Happy for what? They are about to die. They are about to, happy for what? Happy for seeing the truth. Happy because they learned that they lived their life in a good way, and they will have a good ending. Happy for what? They blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Or happy because they imagine how they could have lived their life differently and introduce better things in life. And because of that hope that glitters in their eyes, they rage against the dying of the light, against their death. They rage against their death. And then the final quatrain, and you, my father. This part is so touching. Now the poet reveals in this line that he's writing this poem for his father. And you, my father, there on the sad height. Why it's sad? Because when we reach the highest points, there is no further to go except going down. It's the sun setting moment on the sad height. Curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Please, fight this, put some struggle, fight this death. Even if you have to curse or bless me, whatever. But do your best to go on living. And it was known that Dylan Thomas and his father were not on good terms as father and son. And so Dylan Thomas says to him, live on, go on living, even if you have to curse me. Whether you bless me or curse me, just live and be with us. And then the poem ends with the refrain, the repetition of these two lines. Do not go gently into that good night, rage against the dying of the light. If we go back to the first stanza, the poem again, do not go gently into that good night, old age should burn and rave at close of day. Don't accept death quietly, no, burn and rave with the spirits and the energy of life. Rage against the dying of the light. Is he saying here that all people should burn and rave, and then he is telling us that they rage against the dying of the light? Or is he asking this elderly to rage against the dying of the light? The same question can be asked in each stanza, at the end of each stanza. Do not go gentle. Wise men, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Is he asking them not to go gentle into that good night, or is he observing them and he's telling us what they do? Actually, this stanza, they do not go, because of the pronoun they, so they do not go gently into that good night. Then he's just telling us what they do. They do not go, this is the second stanza, they do not go gently into that good night. They do not accept death quietly and peacefully. But the third stanza and the fourth and the fifth, actually, it can be read either way. It can be read either like good men, the last wave, by crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the right. Now, it can be understood either way. Either he is asking them, telling them to rage against death, or he is telling us that they rage. The fourth stanza is the same. The wild men also, who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late, they grieve it on its way, do not go gently into that good night. Could be understood in either way. And grave men also the same. So the poem introduces to us a message, a powerful message about resisting death, about being defiant in the face of death and not to quietly accept it. If we talk about the musicality in the poem, we have a lot to say. For example, he used enjambment. In English, they pronounce it enjambment. It's a French word, enjambment. In English, it's called run-on lines. He says, good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Crying how bright their frail deeds, connecting the two lines together, this is called enjambment or run-on lines. And also the other example I've just read in the second stanza, they do not go gently into that good night. The ending of the second line and the beginning of the third line in the second stanza, they are linked together in a technique called, the poetic device called enjambment or run-on lines. Also, he used assonance, another poetic device called assonance, the repetition of vowels. It's like the sound of vowels, like, for example, A and I, like A, like wave and frail. This repetition of A, wave, frail, and also the I in crying and dying and so on. It's used a lot. For example, the stanza, good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Deeds, green, this E, the repetition of this E. Also light, night. Not only they have end rhyme, but the repetition of this assonance gives its own pleasing chime. Alliteration, he used it a lot also. The first line, do not go gently into that good night, the repetition of the letter G, go and good. Go, alliteration is the repetition of the first letter of the word. Also deeds and danced, their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Deed and danced, the repetition of the letter D is also alliteration. And also wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight. Caught and sang the sun, the repetition of the letter S, alliteration. And learn too late, the repetition of the letter L. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, the repetition of the letter B. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Okay? Of course, light and dark, he used a lot the words light and dark, symbols of life and death, and he referred to death in several ways in this poem. A good night, it's a pun, like saying good night, going to sleep, and it means death because it's the major sleep that means death. close of death is euphemism for death. Again, like meteors, whenever we see the word like, then we know whatever comes after it is simile. And this is the difference between simile and metaphor. When you see like, then it's simile. No like, no the word like, then it's metaphor. The word lightning, it creates a vivid image, and words like bright and danced, green bay, all these words, they bring to our mind the image of spring and full of energy and hope. Words like curse, bless, coming right one after another, this is paradox or oxymoron. In curse, bless me in the final stanza, and you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears I pray. Curse, bless me. He wants his father to live no matter what. No matter how much he suffers, no matter what, he wants his father. Of course, we can understand the humanitarian reason behind it. We can understand his personal feelings. But is the message of the poem acceptable? If someone knows that he is about to die, and no matter what, he is dying, it's a matter of time, and that person suffers a lot, should that person accept death peacefully? Should that person embrace death peacefully, quietly? Or should he still fight it, resist it, and tries to stick to life as long as and as much as possible? The poem is about death and how we should face it. Should we face it with resistance, or should we face it peacefully and quietly? Of course, different people will have different opinions. Some people may support euthanasia, for example, and they would rather prefer this quick death. Some other people, they don't accept that, and they consider it like this quick death. They consider it like committing a murder. And it's like slippery slope that will lead to a lot of other wrong deeds and crimes. So the question is still open and is still debated. How should we accept death? Should we accept death peacefully, quietly, or should we resist it? And some other people may ask, why he's calling death good night? If he expects us to rage against it, why should we rage against something that he describes as good? Well, first of all, I think we should look at it as good night, meaning someone who's going to sleep. But this is the final sleep. So that's why it's a pun. This good night here refers to death. It's not just someone going to sleep. No, it also refers to death. Someone is going to his final sleep. We should understand it this way. This is one way. The other thing, if we understand it literally as just good night, meaning beautiful, peaceful night, it's not that Dylan Thomas is saying this is death is bad and we should reject. No, he wants to say that it's inevitable. It's the only truth in our life. This is the ending. Wise men know that this is the ending. This is the end of the day. We all face it. But he says that we should do our best to do better in our lives. And maybe this is like he's telling himself also, in my opinion. Maybe this is also what he says to himself, because as we know, he was drunkard and he died so young, at the age of 39, and he died because of his heavy drinking. So it was like a message to himself too, to lead a good life. That stanza about the wild people, the wild men, Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learn too late, they grieve it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. I think this stanza is really talking to himself in this stanza. All in all, the poem is so beautiful, so touching, so moving, so lyrical, and Dylan Thomas' poetry was famous of its passion and musicality. As we can see, the poem is charged with passion and musicality. And it's no doubt it's the most famous villanelle in the 20th century, the modern English poetry, and one of the most famous villanelle in the history of English poetry. It's a beautiful, and once again, a villanelle is a French form of 19 lines, 5 tercets and 1 quatrain. The first line is repeated at the end of the second and the fourth stanza, and the third line in the first stanza is repeated at the end of the third and the fifth stanzas, and both lines, the first and the third of the first stanza, are repeated at the end of the final quatrain. So, and the rhyme scheme is ABA for each tercet and ABAA for the final quatrain. That's all for today, and see you soon, and peace to you all. Do not go gently into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gently into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, they grieve it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gently into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.